Good afternoon, everyone. This is the National American Indian Court Judges Association webinar series, Administering Justice in Tribal Courts During the COVID-19 Pandemic. This rapid response webinar is aimed at judicial wellness. So it's entitled, How Are You? Self-Care During the Pandemic. We're going to allow participants to enter the room and continue to enter the room for another minute here, and then we will begin shortly. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We really understand the stress and a lot of the various issues that are going on around our tribal courts, our closures, and then the continuing issues that are still happening and emerging within our communities. So that's the purpose of our rapid response webinar today. How are you? Self-care during the pandemic. I'm Nikki Borchardt Campbell. I'm the Executive Director of the National American Indian Court Judges Association. And joining me today is Lenny. And once he begins his presentation, I'll go ahead and allow him to introduce himself as well. But he is a fantastic resource and has been chatting and talking with the staff since self-isolation and work from home has begun. So that being said, before we go ahead and launch into the presentation, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping here. So here, most of you are all muted, and you should have the tools and the ability to click on the chat button. So everybody feel free to click on the chat button. We'd love for you to introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining us from. And then this is where we'd love to engage with you. And if you have any questions, any responses to some of the questions that Lenny has, feel free to put that there in that chat box. There's another resource as well for you to ask and for us to answer your questions formally. There's going to be a Q&A button. And feel free to click on that if you have any questions at all during the presentation. And then lastly, we are going to be launching 2 polls during the course of this presentation. Once we launch the poll, I'll probably give everybody about a minute to respond, and then we'll go ahead and assess all of the answers and then broadcast it to everybody. We love the participation. It really helps facilitate the discussion. I'd also like to introduce Jack Trope from KC Family Programs, and also one of our board of directors, Layatalati Hill. Both have been tremendous support, not only to the staff, but also with assisting the development of this work and these rapid response webinars, and recognizing the need for our tribal courts to share information and to be able to provide resources pretty immediately, considering that this pandemic is unprecedented and it's going to be post-COVID that a lot of our courts have not dealt with up until now. So that being said, I would love to introduce Jack and Lottie and give them a minute to talk and to introduce themselves and welcome you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Layatalati Hill. I'd like to welcome everyone on behalf of NAICJA to this webinar. I'd like to thank the NAICJA staff for putting this together, and to our panelists, Lenny Hayes. Thank you for being here and doing this. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Nikki for moderating this event. So as I'm sure you all know, that judges and staff face work stress that may affect the performance and well-being. During this COVID-19 pandemic, that has certainly added to the stress. So, I hope that the session will provide resources and ideas to maintain your wellness during this pandemic. And again, thank you all for being here and doing what you do.
Good afternoon. I'm Jack Trope with Casey Family Programs. We've been partnering with NAICJA for a number of years now. For those of you who don't know us, we are a national foundation. We work on child welfare issues all across the country with the goal of trying to reduce the number of kids in foster care and to help build strong communities. And I'm in the Indian Child Welfare Unit. We work directly with tribes, as well as we also do work around the Indian Child Welfare Act, Title 4E, things like that. So we've been very happy to support Nikki and NAICJA in this process, since we know that the tribal courts are absolutely critical to the well-being of children and families in your communities, and that the work that you do in the child welfare area is a huge part of what many of you do. So we're very happy to be able to support NAICJA's efforts to support all of you during this unprecedented time. So thank you, Nikki, for the opportunity to say hello.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jack, and Casey Family Programs for all of the support that you provide the staff and our organization and our judges. And with that being said, we'll go ahead and move into our presentation. Thank you all for bearing with me. Like many of you, I'm sheltering from home with my children, and my husband is in the middle of oral arguments. So I'd like to also introduce Eloise. And she's going to be helping facilitate her first webinar. All right, with that being said, Lenny. Lenny Hayes is the Executive Director of Tate Topa Consulting. And we are really thankful that Lenny was able to assist us and talk us through some of the judicial wellness concerns that we've had, and to come up with this particular presentation to help address stress and isolation, and really give us some tools to work through some of what we're feeling right now. So thank you so much, Lenny. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here and talk about how are we taking care of ourselves through this pandemic. First of all, I would like to thank the staff of NAICJA, Nikki, for asking me to present. And my hope today is that what I'm going to say right now is that I want to, for me, not only am I a mental health provider, I come to you as a human being who has been impacted by the virus. So often, sometimes, when we're in our positions out in the world, sometimes we have to act and serve as a professional, but really, often we forget that we're a human being also. And so often, sometimes our feelings, our stress, we don't take care of ourselves in a very good way. And I will be one to admit there are times that I don't take care of myself. Nikki, can you do the next slide, please? For some reason, I am not seeing the slides. Oh, shoot.
Lenny, this one says breathing exercise.
Okay, that one was supposed to be the last slide.
Okay, so I think we have some difficulties with the slideshow. We're not seeing the slides, Nikki. It still has just, your shared screen.
All right, everyone, give me 1 minute and I'll go ahead and look.
So while Nikki is trying to figure that out, my name is Tukanwanahi Luta. In my language, that means redstone ghost. I am owner and operator of Tate Topa Consulting. I am from the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate of the northeast corner of South Dakota. I am a mental and chemical health therapist specializing in marriage family therapy. I'm an educator, an advocate, a motivational speaker. I also identify as a two-spirit male. In my language, I am called a winkta. I am a survivor of the child sexual abuse and adult rape, survivor of child mental and physical abuse, and I am also a survivor of the foster care system. So a lot of my work is in regards to who I am presenting myself as today. Again, you know, one of the things I just want to remind people is that I want to make this presentation as comfortable as possible, and I encourage you all to be comfortable. I know this can be difficult at times, but again, like I said earlier, I am a mental health provider, but I am coming to you as a human being who is being impacted by this virus. And this virus has tremendously impacted me in my work. One of the things that I know from talking to individuals from different backgrounds is that one of the things that I know that people aren't really addressing right now is their own anxiety. Often, sometimes what we're going through right now, we don't realize that we are also suffering from depression. So in my conversations with different people, one of the things I talk about is that it's important for us to address them. Because if we don't address those issues, it comes out in many, many different ways. Next slide, please. So I don't know what's going on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a poll, and I'm encouraging everyone to participate. So the first question is, how are you doing? Can we get have everyone check a box, and this would be helpful for me.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and give that just a few more minutes to allow everybody to respond, and then I'll go ahead and shoot and launch the poll results over to you, Lenny.
Okay, thank you.
All right, there are results.
All right. So in the results of this poll, it appears that a lot of people, one of the highest is I could be better. Okay. Second is I'm doing well. Third is I'm struggling. And fourth is I'm stressed. So thank you all for doing this, because that tells me also that I don't know how often people ask you how you're doing, but it's important for us to know how we're doing, because if we're not doing well, we're not going to be doing well with others. We're not going to be doing well with the work that we're doing, because I mean, honestly, we all are under so much tremendous stress right now in regards to what's happening in the world. So one of the things that I wanted to do was talk about, let me take this off here, is to talk about what is stress. So stress is our body's reaction to any change that requires an adjustment. So currently, right now, we are adjusting to isolation. Some of us may have already adjusted. Maybe there's some of us that haven't adjusted to what's going on. So it's really important that we understand stress and the impact on the body. Stress impacts us both emotionally, mentally, and physically. And it's really, it's really important that we know also that there is 3 different types of stress. The first most common one is the acute stress. And an example of that is maybe you have an argument with somebody, and you know how sometimes we as Indian people are so good at the silent treatment. So, so what happens is often if we're not resolving that argument, we have different thoughts going in our head, like, how am I going to solve this? What am I going to say? What if I say something that's wrong? The argument may become, you know, even more heated, you know, so that's a form of stress, acute stress, which is the most common. And then we talked about the second, which lives present with frequent reminders of, so that type of stress refers to like the chaos that may be going on in our life. And that could be sort of like a middle to severe type of stress. The third stress that is really has a really huge impact on us is the chronic stress. And a lot of that is for individuals who are trying to survive, you know, when it comes to poverty, or when we think about maybe some of the people that we work with, like you all that may be judges or lawyers, individuals who are being impacted by violence of all forms. Sometimes the acute stress could be somebody who may be working in an organization and maybe experiencing some type of maybe some harassment, or having to go to work being worried about their job. You know, so that's a real serious type of stress. So I think it's important for all of us to sort of identify those stresses that we're going through. And sometimes we don't do that. I mean, if you don't understand like the different types of stress and the impact on our bodies and our minds, it affects us in many different ways. Next slide, please. So here are some of the effects of stress. Right now, currently, I believe as individuals who are experiencing this COVID-19 and being isolated, a lot of us are probably feeling anger. I know that I feel anger at times because I feel I'm stuck at home. I can't go out and be with my friends. I can't jump in my car and travel to South Dakota to see my own family. So I'm angry about that. I may be irritable. So, and because I can't do those things, I become irritable, and then I'm often lashing out at maybe at family members or people around me. Anxiety is one that I've had many conversations with some of my colleagues and friends, and some of us don't even realize that we're having anxiety. I've had to put myself in a position of talking with friends and explaining to them about what does that anxiety look like. One thing I heard is that when people are feeling extreme anxiety, it feels like they want to jump out of their body. They can't sit still. They have racing thoughts. They may be breathing heavy. You know, that's a form of anxiety. It even causes like mental fatigue on us, muscular distress. So those are a lot of the the issues that are impacted by stress, and we need to know what our body is going through. Thank you. So the effects of stress can be mild to very chronic. I mean, it affects our immune system. Sometimes I hear people who are under a lot of stress may be impacted by getting sick constantly, like with the flu, colds, asthma, and other immune system compromises. High blood pressure. Stress causes us to have high blood pressure. And, you know, if we're, again, like I said earlier, if we're not aware of our stress level or what's happened to us under stressful moments, these are the effects of stress. Next slide, please. So I don't know how often, if people are asking you this, and I often ask my friends all the time, even my colleagues, what are you doing to take care of yourself? You know, that's a really good question to ask yourself. Again, like I said, when we're in stressful moments, we don't even think about taking care of ourselves. or even asking ourselves, you know, how are we taking care of ourselves? So I just want to give a minute to have you think about that before the next slide, because it's really important. And I would love to know if there's people out there who have been asked this question. What are you doing to take care of yourself? Has there been people who asked you?
Hey folks, I definitely, Lenny, my kids and I love getting outside and, you know, just taking short walks around our neighborhood when the weather permits. My little ones are full of energy, and especially that 7-year-old. So I definitely put him on the bike, and we go for as far as, you know, he can, so that, you know, he gets some energy out and we're able to get some fresh air. I'm also seeing that a lot of folks, some folks they love hugging their pugs. Angie, my mother has pugs as well, and they are the cutest. So, you know, there's a lot of folks out there who also do some walking, and I've seen that as well from not only our staff, but also friends on social media. How about the rest of you who are on the webinar? Feel free to let us know on the chats or under Q&A.
All right, next slide, please. So these are some of the types of self-care that some of the things I do this, and I'm glad, thank you, Nikki, for letting us know what type of things you do to practice self-care. So here are some things that I have come up with, things that I've done. So I usually take my dog for a walk. I should be doing more walking and exercising, but I'm not, but I need to do that. Meditating is a huge part of being able to do self-care with yourself. If you can go off by yourself for a few minutes, like sit in your office, or if you want to go outside, sit somewhere in your yard and just take some time out and try not to think about work. What I would like encourage people to do is like sit and look around what's around you. What do the trees look like? What does the wind feel like on your face? Are you smelling anything like from nature? I'm sure there's some areas that you can smell like the trees. You know, one of the things that I know that we don't normally do either as Indian people, you know, because this is like a huge struggle with us, but are we asking for help? Are we reaching out to people who we may be close to? Are we letting people know that we're struggling? You know, and it's really important too that when we practice self-care is to disconnect yourself from work. How often do you do that? You know, that's a form of taking care of your work. And I do understand that sometimes we're not able to do that. But it's important that we do that, because if we don't do that, then we just create more stress on our minds, our bodies, our spirits. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we're not going to be able to take care of others in a good way. Are you eating right? I know during this, since I've been quarantined at home, I have to watch myself because I'm eating more. I'm sure I probably gained weight. You know, are you reading a book? That's one of the things that I love to do as a disconnection from the world is I will read a book. I love to read. And I'm really impacted by the fact that I'm the type of person that loves to hang out in coffee shops and bookstores, and I'm not able to do that right now because of what's happening. Thank God I have tons of books to read. You know, are you calling a friend? You know, we need to take time out, you know, to spend and talk time with our friends on a phone, or even FaceTime them on Messenger so that we can see them. Are you listening to music? Are you watching movies that make you laugh? One of the things that I've been encouraging people and even my friends is not to watch depressing movies, because that really impacts us. you know, and what it does is it just puts added stress on us being stuck at home. So I always encourage people, you know, watch something that makes you laugh. Are you using our medicines as a part of taking care of yourself? One of the things that I do is make sure in the morning that I smudge myself down. Any work that I may do, if I'm talking to a client or if I'm talking about maybe doing a presentation on violence, you know, I have to smudge myself down, because if I'm not doing that, then I'm not taking care of myself. And I was reminded by an elder, you know, because I do a lot of work, I do a lot of presentations on violence of all forms on our people. And I am a survivor of many types of violence. And one of the things that an elder reminded me of is when I'm up there presenting, am I nurturing that little boy that went through extreme trauma? Meaning that what she said to me, and it was a great reminder. She said, when you're up there presenting about such a difficult topic, that little boy that was violated by all forms of trauma, he's standing there with his hands over his ears. So are you nurturing him? So one of the things that I started doing was I allow myself to sit down and color books. And they're not using coloring books, but not using an adult kind, but actually coloring with kid coloring books. So that was a form of taking care of myself. Are you asking others how they're doing? And when you do that, and what I mean by that is that you don't try to solve the problem that they're experiencing, but just being able just to lend an ear and say, I'm listening to you, I hear you. You know, is there anything I could do for you? So this is a poll that that I wanted everyone to do, is what are you doing to take care of yourself? So I encourage you all to be a part of this, and I'll wait for the results. How's it going, Nikki? Oh, okay.
There you go.
Wow. Thank you, everybody. Well, it looks like a lot of you are walking and exercising, which is a really good thing, because that helps with our stress in our body. Smudging in prayer. Oh, wow. Listening to music, calling a friend. Not sure. Okay. So it's really good, you know, to sort of take a look at how you are practicing self-care, because that's really important. You know, especially with us as males, often sometimes we feel like we have to sort of jump into that role of making sure that our family members are being taken care of first. When we don't practice self-care, that's where we experience a lot of that stress on our body, the irritation, getting angry. So I would really encourage that, to continue doing self-care during this time. One of the things too, I don't know how often you all do this either, but one of the things that I found really helpful for me is my connection to the elders in the community. You know, that could be just as good as checking in on them and asking how they're doing, but also going to them for advice, because I always say that our elders have a lot of knowledge and can be very helpful during stressful times that we're experiencing. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I feel that is really important, so when we're talking about stress, sometimes what we often will do is that we will stay stuck in that negative way of thinking. So one of the things that I've been encouraging my friends, colleagues, people that I work with, is that we need to reframe our thoughts. So an example, my friends and I can't see each other. You know, in the beginning of this, when the COVID started and when I quarantined at home, I was angry and frustrated because I couldn't see my friends. And like I said earlier, I'm one of the type that likes to go out on the weekends and meet friends for coffee. And I couldn't do that. So I was angry that I had to stay home, stay stuck. In the beginning of this, I will be one to admit that I was impacted by depression. I found myself sleeping more often during the day, taking naps, and often these naps would lead to 2 hours. And normally I don't do that. So I knew instantly in my mind that I needed to get up and start moving around because I actually did get depressed. So I really like this. I came across this, and one of the things I've been reminding people is that we need to change our negative thoughts into positive thoughts. So example, my friends and I can't see each other. So the positive thing is that my friends and I are protecting each other. One of the things that I want to say to people is that this is not something that we are going to continuously do, but we need to aware that we are going to go back and forth. So we may be negative one time, and then maybe another time we'll be in a positive mood. So I don't want you to feel like this is something that you have to be constantly be doing, but I want you to remind yourself, where are you at? So I'm stuck at home. So changing that into a positive way of thinking is, I am safe at home. I have lost all my freedom. I imagine some people have said that. I've said that. You know, the freedom to get in and jump into my car and go see family members. And I'm not able to do that. And the majority of my family members live in South Dakota, and I live here in Minnesota. And I can't just go home whenever I want. You know, I worry about my family members who have major health issues. The only thing that I can encourage them, because I was actually getting really frustrated with some of my family members because they weren't taking care of themselves properly. They weren't using the masks like they should. They weren't using gloves when they would go out. So instead of getting, in the beginning, I got really frustrated and angry with them. Now, all I do is remind them, and then I cut myself off from that. Because if I focus all my energy on trying to convince them to do what the right thing is to do, then I forget about myself, right? And so my biggest thing is just, you know, it's okay for me to say, are you using your mask? Are you using your gloves? And then leave it at that. Again, I don't want to waste all my energy in trying to convince them, because then if I continue to do that, then I stop taking care of myself. So, you know, it's really important to see a lot of that. And if you don't, you know, we're not doing a very good job of taking care of ourselves. And again, like, I'm just going to, again, say that, you know, I come to you as a human being who's being impacted by this virus, but I'm also coming to you as a mental health provider. Nikki, can you do the next slide, please? So, you know, this is one thing that I would really encourage people to do. Since I started doing this, it has been a great, tremendous help in me being able to go through my day. So the first question is, what am I grateful for today? You know, so for me, when I ask myself that in the morning, one of the things that I say is that I am grateful that I could see the sunshine. If I'm outside, if I go outside, I say, oh, I'm grateful to feel the wind on my face. I'm grateful to see the birds. You know, so that's like a daily reminder that we can do. Another one is, who am I checking in on? It could be our family members, it could be other relatives, it could be friends, or who am I connecting with today? You know, often we do connect with the people, the family members who we live with, but it's just as important to reach out to others outside of your home to check in on them. What expectations of normal, or am I letting go of today? You know, it's important, you know, to really take a look at that. If you're not in a place of letting go of things, that would also impact you too. Because, you know, our lives are changed right now. in regards to what's happening in our country, in our world, in our tribal communities, and even in our own homes. You know, so we have to let go of what's really impacting us. And there's many different ways. At the end of this presentation, we're going to be doing an exercise, and I encourage all of you to participate on your own during this time right now, or, you know, try to remember to do this for yourself at night before you go to bed, because, you know, again, if we're not taking care of ourselves, how can we help others? So how am I getting outside today? It could be as simple as going for a walk around the block. You know, be sure to practice whatever you need to protect yourself. Stay 6 feet away from people. You know, so how am I getting outside? How am I moving my body? That's one of the important things that we need to do, because when we are not doing anything, our bodies will hold all the stress. You know, I know a lot of you are even, you know, I have friends who would go out to and get a massage. That's a way of releasing the tension that our bodies are feeling. And currently, right now, we're not able to do that because we're stuck in our homes. So it's important that we continuously move our bodies in many different ways. So what I found really interesting was talking with one of my friends this morning. So what he does with his family, his wife and his children, what they started doing every morning together is doing yoga. And when he told me that, I said, that is a great idea for you to do with your family, because you're getting that connection. You're getting that being able to take care of your body. You're doing it with your family members. That even makes it much more greater. So maybe that's something that you can think of doing. What kind of things can you do with your family in the morning? What I believe is very important too is to be okay with having a conversation, having like a family talk and just checking in with everybody. Like, how are you doing? How are you okay? Because currently right now, one of the things that I'm also hearing too is that a lot of children are experiencing a lot of anxiety because they're not able to be in school with their friends. And so one of the things that I'm reminded when I work with, or when I talk with families, our parents, is that if you don't know where your anxiety level is, you're not going to be able to handle your child's anxiety. You're not going to be able to talk with them, support them. So it's really important that we check in to see where our anxiety level is at. One of the things that I feel that's important too is what beauty am I creating or cultivating or inviting today? One of the things that I like to do is to make sure that I laugh and that I laugh enough. You know, if I want to disconnect, I will often call one of my friends and we'll sit on the phone and just laugh and just talk and not focus our conversation about what's going on in the world today. Because it is very impactful and it's hard because we don't know. I mean, we're in the unknown right now. You know, we're trying to survive, and it's okay to say that. I mean, it's important for us to say that, because if we're not telling ourselves that, you know, or denying our feelings, again, we create more stress on our bodies. So next slide, please. So one of the things that that I learned from an elder, in a lot of research that was done on individuals who experience or have experienced a lot of trauma, what normally happens is that individual will usually have a lot of compassion towards people, communities. And one of the biggest struggles of a survivor of violence is, one of the things that I didn't practice enough was self-compassion. And I learned that from an elder. An elder who I spent time with asked me that one time, are you practicing self-compassion? Because if you're not doing that, you're not helping yourself. So it's important to know about self-compassion. Are you treating yourself the best way that you know how. Do you need improvement, or do you think you're doing a good job of practicing self-compassion? Oh, okay, question. There's a request to share your resource. Colleague, would they be willing to do a Zoom class on the topic of trauma-focused yoga? I can reach out to my friend. I will get back to Nikki on that. But my friend lives in California, close to the Mexico border. But I can reach out to him and definitely ask him if he can maybe practice or share and be willing to do a Zoom class. That's an awesome question. One self-care technique that I'm doing with my kids is soft belly breathing, a guided meditation. That is awesome. That's a really good thing to be doing also. And I'm glad that I'm getting everyone to think about different ways of doing self-care and taking care of yourself. So after talking about all of the stress and what happens to our body, one important thing to remember is how we react to a difficult situation will affect how stress affects our life and our physical and mental health. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to think about that. So in regards to the mind, body, and medicine work, if anyone is specifically looking for individuals who are Native and who do that kind of work, there is a resource at the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault, the Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center in Minneapolis. There's an elder by the name of Linda Eagle Speaker, who does a lot of mind-body medicine work. She would be a great contact, but I know currently right now they're in quarantine. They're not in their office, but she and another elder will often go into communities and will do mind-body medicine work with certain populations in tribal communities, like survivors, youth, staff members of organizations. So they would be a great resource. I can also try to get that information to Nikki to maybe pass on to all of you. But again, her name is Linda Eagle Speaker. The other elder is Donna LaChapelle. They do a lot of work in regards to mind-body medicine in tribal communities, tribal organizations. She's another great resource. Next slide, please. So what we're going to do here, and it's going to be really difficult, but and the reason why that is because I wanted to speak before this starts. So one of the techniques that I often will use when I work with clients or even talking with other individuals, friends, even my own family members, the importance of breathing. When we are under a lot of stress or we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not breathing properly either. So in this YouTube video, I know there's a lot of wording, so what I want to encourage you all to do right now is I want you, before we start it, what I would like you to do is I would like you to close your eyes. And I want you to think about a place that maybe you feel safe at. It could be by the ocean. It could be sitting under a tree. It could be under a prairie. But I want you to think of a safe place for you. What does that look like? And when you're doing that, I want you to imagine get familiar with the place. What does it look like? What are you enjoying? Are you looking at the green grass? Are you smelling the air around you? That's what I mean about being familiar. And when you get to that place, I want you to take a deep breath. Breathe in. And I want you to hold your breath for at least 3 to 5 seconds. And then I want you to let go really slow. And I want you to do that several times during this exercise. The music is going to play for 5 minutes. But what I want you to do is I want you to sort of think about what I said. Because often sometimes we don't do that. You can do this exercise before you go to bed at night. Because, you know, before you go to bed. Because when you do this, this also helps you to sleep well at night. If you're not sleeping well, if you're waking up continuously during the night, there's obviously something going on in your body. So let's start that. Is it starting, Nikki?
Lenny, yes, it should be sharing right now. And it's starting.
Is everyone hearing the music?
Lenny, the music is not playing, but the image is playing.
It's kind of funny, I could hear it when you're talking. So I apologize that this is not coming through right. I believe they will be sending out this PowerPoint. So I want to encourage, if you have time by yourselves to practice this exercise. I am also at the end of the slides. There is a resource for different types, and you can actually, if you go on your phone and go into what is it, the store, the app store, you can look for apps in regards to relaxation, and I would really encourage you to maybe put that app on your phone, and when you have time during the day, or again when you go to bed at night, just listen to it. They do have tapes too that maybe you can purchase when this is all over with, or and listen to this music before you go to bed too, because it's really important, again, like I said, to relax. So I apologize that this is not working well. Next slide, please.
Lenny, hold on. I need to stop the YouTube
Okay.
and then get back to your PowerPoint.
So, so basically, what I would like to do right now is to get some thoughts. Have any of you ever used this type of relaxation? Does it work for you? Can anybody tell me about their experience? Nice, Nikki, you have a breathing app on your watch? Nikki, do you find it helpful when you use it?
I do. My watch will buzz me. I have an Apple Watch, so it'll buzz every once in a while during the day, and it'll just remind me to breathe. And it was very similar to the image on the YouTube video, where it will, contract and then expand in relation to the breath, breathing in deep, holding it, and then breathing out slowly. So it does help when I use it and when I remember to use it. And to be honest, sometimes I'm just working and just so into what I'm doing that I'll probably just ignore it. But when I do use it, it's really helpful.
Good. Gwendolyn says, I do something similar when I'm having a hard time falling asleep. I picture the house I want to build and walk through it. Wow, that's a great idea. And we call that guided imagery. Okay, someone said I have the same on my Fitbit, very helpful. What about males? Is there any male out there that uses? Okay, I also have one on my watch. It is a nice reminder to breathe. It does help to calm down. Thank you.
Lenny, this is Nikki
Yeah.
again. I've also downloaded some for children as well. There's a couple mindfulness apps. So, if, my son appears to have had a harder day, or I need to bring him down to calm down, we've used some of those apps before. And it creates like the imagery for the kids so that, he can close his eyes. And I think some are like imagining floating up into the clouds, and it's just guided kind of meditation and imagery for children. So just letting everybody know that those are available as well. I know a lot of us are trying to keep our children grounded and try to shield them from some of the stress. And I was just telling some friends that I was a little worried that my son was internalizing my stress related to this situation. So I think that that's also a good tool. There's also some family yoga. His class just sent a yoga video, so he was doing yoga downstairs. There are also apps related to breathing, meditation, and mindfulness for children as well.
Yes. So Nikki, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to sort of put you on a spot. So when your child may be having a hard time, how are you finding yourself talking to your child?
It's one of two things. So it's either, me trying to not be frustrated. And so it's either frustrated or me trying to take a step back and breathing to engage with him, especially if, you know, both of us look frustrated and sound frustrated. I'm really trying to acknowledge why he's feeling frustrated, or even acknowledge his feelings. Because, you know, I know it can't be easy on any of us, and him being pulled out of school and having me as his home teacher, school teacher, you know, this is all just rapid change for him. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be a little bit patient, but, you know, I'm trying not to voice my frustration. Although, like any other parent, you know, sometimes you hear the volume of your voice increase over repeated, you know, requests or, you know, something like that. But, you know, he's doing really well considering the circumstances. And like I said, we're trying to help get some of that energy out by letting him bike around the neighborhood.
Yes, that's good. You know, and one of the things that I think is important for us to do too, even with ourselves and with our relatives around us, is to make sure that we validate each other's feelings. And what I mean by that is when a child is struggling and they may be not know how to say that they're frustrated. You know, what we can do as adults or even as parents is just to say, I know this is hard. It's going to be okay. And that's what I mean about validating their feelings, but we also need to validate our feelings. If we're feeling frustrated because of the fact that we're here in our own homes and not being able to go out and do things that we want to do, we need to acknowledge our own feelings. And if we don't do that, that only causes more damage and more mental health issues on ourselves, which can lead to depression.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, Lenny. Sorry, I don't mean to, you know, take over the whole conversation, everyone.
Oh no,
But
I want us to have conversation because I would love for others to jump in as part of the Q&A.
yeah, absolutely. So everybody, if you know, you have something to contribute, you know, feel free to raise your hand, put anything in the Q&A box. But Lenny, on the topic of that and like expressing your feelings and acknowledging your feelings, you know, a lot of what, you know, the staff and I have kind of been talking about in our like daily Zoom meetings is, you know, discussing that there's this grief that's happening collectively with everybody who is sheltering in place and whose lives have been disrupted, and we're trying to adjust to this new normal, so that there are a lot of feelings happening through this process, and a lot of it is grief. So,
Yes.
you know, I've been trying to encourage, you know, the staff and, you know, even within, you know, our small circles of people to understand that, you know, this is grief, this is different, this is, you know,
Yep.
this is not normal. And, you know, I don't expect you to feel normal in this circumstance, because, you know, we aren't working from home. We are surviving a pandemic, and we're doing that safely from our homes, and we're trying to work in the process. So, you know, it's different, and it's okay to feel stress and sad and to feel that grief.
Yes.
So thank you for that, Lenny. And
Yes.
it's also important to like illustrate that to, you know, our partners and also to our children. So our children can know that if they're sad, they can express that they're sad.
Yes. And it's really important, like I said, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we are experiencing a type of grief. And we need to acknowledge that to ourselves, that yes, I am experiencing this grief because I have a lot of things that are taken away from me, you know, and I know that people are fearful of catching this virus because, you know, they don't know what's going to happen. We worry about our relatives outside of our homes about catching this virus. So yes, it is a form of grief, and we need to acknowledge that, and we need to be able to talk about it. And I'm glad that you brought it up with your staff too, because I'm part of another team, And one of the things that I encouraged us to do before we started our meeting on work was just to go around and ask, how are you doing? How are you taking care of yourself? So that just opens up the door of releasing maybe what you're feeling, maybe what you're struggling with. Often sometimes we have a hard time talking to family members about what's going on with us. So when we're going to other staff members who may be our friends, we're able to talk about what's going on with us. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, Nikki. Does anybody else have any thoughts? Questions? Any of your staff members, would they like to say anything?
Rebecca Elton Ansley. Jack and Lottie, also feel free to go ahead and, chat or pose a question as well.
I guess the question I would like to ask all of you, on the information that I presented today, did you even think of any of that? Like the different levels of stress, what was happening in your body?
I think it was important for all of us to see, that visualization of like stress, the different levels of stress. I know that we're all feeling stressed, but I think it's important to be able to delineate the different types and the different types of responses. I've been trying to also, rephrase things for myself to help, with the outlook of things. So, that little chart you had, which was, I think the first one was, I'm like isolated or quarantined, and just change that perspective to I'm safe at home, I'm safe. Yep. And I'm like sheltering at home. So, that type of perspective really helps as well. And I think I talked to the staff about that, because when I'm out walking with the kids, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of the podcasts had mentioned that. And then to also say, okay, for every negative thing that's maybe popping into your head, to maybe, try to acknowledge the positive thing on, the flip side of that. So that was very kind of similar to the chart on that one slide that you had about, taking one negative perception and then really just trying to, rephrase that.
Reframing.
And to reframe, that it was really helpful. Elton, what about you?
Yeah, sure. I think, a lot of this is one of my things I try to do to keep myself entertained and others, because for me, I realize that humor is a gift, and amongst our Indian people, it's used as a resiliency. So I try to, things fun. So I wear these different things now that on my head, like ears, crowns, what have you, just because, that's the world we live in virtually, but for me, I think I haven't really thought of the way I was feeling in terms of stress, because I'm one of those individuals that always has to interpret things kind of in a cultural way. And I think that's just my way of understanding how I'm feeling in myself. So I kind of look at things as, how do I feel in the morning? What aspect of my wellness is out of balance? So like, if for sitting too long the day before from being on Zoom, or, my body's aching, I know at least there's some physical stress or physical aspect that's out of balance for me. So then I'll have to stretch or do things in terms of like mental health, looking at, my mental health, being alone. I think early when I'm on day 34, I believe, of being isolated, self-isolated. But I think early on, one of the things that really kind of helped me conceptualize who I am as a Native person was really trying to understand this term that I saw on Facebook by one of my relatives talking about, traditional discipline, like trying to understand that for myself, because You know, we do things as Indian people. We participate in ceremony. We learn how to pray. We learn how to smudge for a reason. And times like these really give us that opportunity to utilize that for what we're supposed to. So for instance, being isolated for 34 days per se, I kind of think of it and frame it like being in a ceremony, an overnight ceremony, right? For some of us, or at least for me and my family, we participate in the Native American church. And so the way I think about these things of being in my home and practicing what I've been taught has really helped guided me in a way that, you know, I think if I wasn't fortunate enough to know what to do in those cultural ways, you know, I think it'll be a little bit more difficult. So I always have to translate how I'm feeling into what I've been taught in a way. And I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's just kind of how I've been trying to understand my own wellness, you know, in this journey. And it may change for us, you know, and change for us as Indian people, how we do things. I mean, even shaking hands is going to be really difficult for me.
Yeah.
You know, because there's cultural stories that go along with what the hand is and why the shake is important, you know, those type of things. But anyway, that was me.
Yeah, and you know, and I understand, you know, like as Indian people, we are having a lot of things taken away from us, even just the simple gesture of giving a hug. And we can't do that right now either. So are we doing more hugging at home? Are we hugging our loved ones? You know, sort of think about that. I mean, I know this kind of sounds funny, but you know, people who live alone, I mean, how are you doing to release some of your stress? What I would encourage is hug a pillow. I know that sounds funny, you know, but that's a way of just helping yourself by being able to do that. Because again, you know, that's part of who we are as Indian people. Shaking of the hand or giving each other a hug when we see each other in public places, and we're not able to do that right now. So I would encourage a lot of hugging at home with your family members. Family members, are you doing things together? You know, talking about that yoga experience that my friend mentioned that him and his whole family are doing together, which could only take like a half hour during a day. That's what I mean about we need to create time and space for ourselves to be able to take care of ourselves. So I'm going to encourage that. But thank you, Elton.
Hello, this is Lottie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of like the slides that Nikki was talking about earlier too about reframing. I kind of do that a lot myself about just really thinking about the positive side of things. And really focusing on what I can control, what is in my control, and not, you know, not focusing on stuff that I cannot control. So that's pretty helpful too. So that's kind of how I deal with it.
Good. Thank you. You know, and one of the things that I want to encourage people too, and as a reminder, it is okay to be frustrated. It's okay to say, I'm frustrated right now and I can't think of doing anything positive. That's okay. What we can do for ourselves is giving ourselves the option when we want to move on. So, you know, like an exercise that I teach individuals who I work with who are specifically dealing with trauma. And when they're at a place of being able to develop healthy coping skills, one of the things that I try to do in my work is reframing by acknowledging our Western way of thinking, but also acknowledging our own traditional ways of healing. So as an example, and an elder taught me this. She asked me to stop using the word trigger and asked me to start using the word reminder. And in that teaching, she says that when we say trigger, that's a very powerful negative word. And we as Indian people, We believe everything has a spirit. Our trees, our grass, our trees, you know, everything has a spirit. And so does our feelings of anger, sadness, frustration, and other negative words. So when those spirits come to visit us, we need to acknowledge them by saying, I see you, I feel you, and now you can go away. And always remembering that those spirits are going to come back and visit. So that's a really great way of taking care of ourselves too, because we are right now currently feeling all these different feelings of sadness, loneliness, you know, anger, frustration, and we need to be okay with acknowledging those feelings with ourselves. And I always tell people, you know, it's healthy to have these feelings, but it's not okay if you are lashing out those feelings towards people around you. I like what you said, Nikki. My kids have been clingy, so there is a lot of holding, hugging, cuddling here. That's a good way too, because not only are you helping your child, but you're also helping yourself. I love that. Anybody else want to share anything that they may be doing?
Hi, Lenny. This is Ansley.
Hi.
I just wanted to say thank you, and I also liked your slide about reframing things. I know it's been, for me, it's been a process every day. You know, it's not just a straight, you know, I feel this way or that way. It goes up and down for me. And I think coming to recognize that and understand that it is a process, and it's not always, I'm not always going to be happy or sad, kind of helps me just to get through those moments of feeling sad. And I think that's it largely depends on the weather for me, to be honest. Like right now it's really snowy here, and it's my ability to get outside with my 2 young children it's not going to happen today because of the snow. And so, you know, but reframing that, I guess, instead of being outside, we're inside, we're together, reaching out to family more, and we're just able to be more connected with people far away because we're not outside. But yeah, I just want to say thank you, and I'm definitely gonna pass along some of your tools and resources to some family members.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, what I always encourage you when you have small kids, if you're able to, when you have time, sit down and color with them. You know, because you're connecting with them, you're helping them, and you're also helping yourself. I mean, you know, sometimes we don't even allow ourselves to be playful. And we should be doing that during this time, because, you know, go out and be playful. Like I play with my dogs. I have 2 dogs. I find myself crawling on the floor, making them bark, you know, having them, you know, chase each other, play with them, you know, and that is a sense of like a relief for me. When I know that my last thing of the day is done, I will leave my work. If it's necessary for me to get on my email at 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, I'll do that. But I try to disconnect from my work and just enjoy maybe a movie, you know, whatever. I try to, you know, really disconnect myself from work, and I would encourage people to do that too, because sometimes we can use work as a way of escaping. And that doesn't help us when we do that. So. Thank you, Steve. Steve says it's about 70 degrees here in Oklahoma. I have no excuse not to go for a walk, but I'll come up with one. Thank you. Well, so before I end the presentation, these are some resources. And again, like I said, you can jump on your phone and find different apps in regards to relaxation, breathing, I know that they're on there because I definitely did some. If you're a reader, one of the things that I learned to do when I first started doing this work as a mental health provider, The Untethered Soul is a really excellent book about self-care in the field that we do. It comes from the experience of as a mental health provider, but I believe it's an important read for a lot of people who are in the field of helping others. So I would really encourage that book. Leaving It at the Office is another good book, but again, that's like a mental health perspective. But again, it's also teaching about leaving your work at the office, because I believe that a lot of our stress when we don't leave, something that may be going on at work, it really does impact us. The COVID-19 resources came out for Indian country, came out several days ago. That would be a great resource to go through and take a look at. I believe there's all kinds of different things in that resource. So that's a great resource for you to take a look at. And I know that there's multiple different resources out there. So I would encourage you all to take a look at them. Oh, I like that. Self-care and playing is so important now. Yes, it is. Oh, thank you. I will check it out. I never knew how much I used work as an escape. That is really good to see that and to be able to acknowledge that, because I believe a lot of us do that when we're in the helping field. We're so constantly in that mindset of wanting to help others. But again, that's where we need to practice more of self-compassion. When we practice more of self-compassion, then we begin to take care of ourselves better. Wow. All right, Nikki, would you like to say anything before we end?
Yes, just thank you, Lenny. We really appreciate you helping us navigate through this particular situation. We really do understand the stresses of our judges and our court staff, only because, we hear about those stresses from the front line. And we generally try to ensure that there's some aspect or element of judicial wellness built into a lot of our curriculum and our conferences. So this particular issue, which we've said over and over again, is unprecedented. We understand that this is adding to that level of stress, not only professionally with regard to, how are we going to conduct our business, but also personally, because a lot of us are isolated. And we are trying to survive a pandemic while working from home. A lot of us. Some of us are still conducting business as usual, but they have on the added stress of trying to survive this pandemic. So again, we just appreciate your time and your ability to help us reframe our thinking and to give us some tools as we are trying to navigate through this. And so for the folks on the line, like we've mentioned in all the previous webinars, we don't have all of the answers. We don't have all of the resources, but whatever we do have, we want to ensure that we're giving it to you and that we're providing those resources to you as well. We really appreciate the work that you're doing in your communities, and we understand that despite all of this and despite all of the worry and the concern and all of us trying to stay healthy and safe, that you are still trying to help your communities and that you're still trying to ensure the fair administration of justice is happening in your communities, especially and maybe only in those emergency situations. So some of you are only hearing the hardest types of cases and the hardest sets of facts. So we're hoping that this particular webinar and the tools and Lenny's words are going to help you as you're continuing to do what you're doing right now. Feel free to reach out to us. We are trying to compile resources among all of the different tribal organizations, our own resources. With our first webinar on Virtual Talking Circle, we had Cheryl Fairbanks on, who talked about compassion fatigue and also a little bit of traditional wellness as well. And if this is something that you would love to have ongoing, perhaps that's something we can work on as well, even just to create a safe space that, maybe isn't recorded and replayed over and over again, but let us know how we can help. We're here for you. We want to make sure that everybody is well and everybody is staying safe. So feel free to reach out to us. It looks like Rebecca just put all of our emails there on the bottom in the chat. But also, if you're part of our board of directors or any of our contractors, we absolutely invite you to our staff huddles. Like Elton mentioned, we love to laugh, and that's one of the ways that we're able to still connect with each other, and we enjoy catching up with each other, and we have our theme days. And so feel free to even just, sign in to just see what we might be wearing on a particular theme day. We're trying to serve you, but also make sure that we're taking care of each other as well. So if anybody has any other suggestions, feel free to reach out to us. Our emails are there. And if anybody wants to help join any of our future webinars, we would love to have you on those as well. And then, of course, last but not least, all of our webinars are posted on our webpage. And please look out for an announcement. We have been working with Buffalo Nickel to help streamline our webpage, make it more visually easier to navigate. And we've also organized all of our multimedia resources. So while those of you have some time at home, we are going to have our collection of videos, including select panels from our conferences. We will have our podcasts available, and we also have webinars from our past grant work available as well. So look for that announcement hopefully within the next 24 hours. We are hoping to launch this new webpage that would include the links to our pandemic resources and partner pandemic resources, and also other Indian organizations. So that being said, thank you, Lenny, again. Thank you to Casey Family Programs, and on behalf of the NAICJA staff, our board of directors, and our steering committee, thank you for joining us today. Everybody, please stay safe, and we hope that you join us this time next week. We'll be talking about apps and technology and things that you can be using as you are working from home or sheltering in place. All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Stay safe.